Revenge films.
My husband Jonathan was the middle sibling of 3. He had a younger sister and an older brother. Jonathan had a really warm and kind personality, and he was an empathetic person that could really understand people's pain. I loved this husband of mine, and even though we were in our 5th year of marriage, we got along like we were still newlyweds. My brother-in-law and my sister-in-law were both really great to me, and I also loved the 2 of them. However, the person that I didn't like in his family, and the person that I tried to avoid at all cost, was my father-in-law. My father-in-law was a tyrant straight out of a book. When the siblings were little, he told me that his father was physically abusive towards them under the guise of calling it discipline. And not only to them, but also to their mother. On top of that, not only was he physically aggressive, apparently their father held all of the power in the house, and everything had to go his way, or there would be consequences. For example, if the family had plans to go out to eat together, all of the children's opinions would be immediately shut down, and the father was the only one that was allowed to decide what the family would eat. Another example was that in my husband's house, they were only allowed to wear clothes that his father approved of, and anything that he didn't like, they weren't allowed to wear in or out of the house. Apparently, all clothing with bright colors were denied. But the reason behind that was also such a joke. He said that looking at the bright colors made his eyes flash, and the kids were only allowed to wear dark colors. For my husband and his older brother, it was still tolerable for the boys. But for my sister-in-law, of course she was a girl, and she wanted to wear cute clothing. When she got older, she started working a part-time job so that she could buy her own clothes. But one day when she came home from school, she found that all of her bright-colored clothes were taken out of her closet. When she looked in the trash, all of those clothes had been thrown away, along with the compost, and she couldn't get them back. On birthdays or over Christmas, it was normal for most families to have cake or to celebrate together. But in my husband's family, just because his father said that he didn't like cake, he said that he had never once had a birthday cake or blow out a candle. And so when my husband and I first started dating, and I got him a birthday cake for his birthday to celebrate, I remember he was so moved that he cried tears of happiness when he blew out the candle. Jonathan has always liked sweets and was never able to have them growing up, and he said that he was beyond happy. Of course, every year after that, I bought birthday cakes for him, and when we had our own child, I also made sure to buy a Christmas cake for the holidays as well. Living in a household like that, apparently my mother-in-law considered getting a divorce a number of times, but she didn't have any security to be able to live by herself. And that's why she was left not knowing what to do. And that's why she wanted her children to become independent as soon as possible and get them out of the house. So she did her best until the children were old enough to move out. And now she's living with just her husband, quietly tolerating it alone. Because my husband and his siblings knew how abusive their father was, all of them tried to convince their mother to come and live with one of them. But she kept refusing because she said she didn't want to cause anybody any trouble. For the record, as for me, ever since we first got married, my husband told me that I didn't need to do anywhere near his father and tried to protect me from him. But of course, I had to go greet him when Jonathan and I got engaged. And when I did, I had already become a victim to his abuse. To my disbelief, as soon as my father-in-law saw me, he immediately put a score on me. And not only that, but he said it out loud that I was only a score of 50. When my husband heard that, he lost his temper on the spot, and he immediately removed me from the situation. And then he told me,
"You don't need to see him anymore like that, ever again."
Ever since then, neither of us had really gone to see him. Back in his home, my father-in-law was the king of the household and did anything and everything abusive that he could. However, in his late 50s, his health started to deteriorate, and he required intensive nursing. My father-in-law no longer had the ability to move freely, and his abusiveness only powered up more, and he used his wife like a slave. And also, he was demanding that his children come over and help out as well. The worst was when one time, my mother-in-law was out buying the groceries, and he was sitting at home watching TV, and upset that he couldn't change the channel. Apparently, he then called his daughter over and over again and demanded that she come over, and she was furious. Until he became ill, my father-in-law had been doing anything and everything as he wanted. But as soon as he was unable to move freely, he was still using my mother-in-law in any way that he wanted. Even though he was already treating his wife like a slave, once he became ill, he started using his wife even more in any way that he could and refused to lift a finger anymore. Every single time that I would see my mother-in-law, I could see the exhaustion building up in her even more. But days like this only continued, and that was when everybody had reached their limits. Everybody was exhausted with dealing with their father, and the family decided to place him in a nursing home. My father-in-law agreed to be placed in a nursing home, but under the condition that his wife come to see him and help him every single day at the care center. But my mother-in-law said that was still better than having him at home 24 hours of the day, so she also agreed to it. After that, just as her husband had demanded, my mother-in-law went to the nursing home every single day, even in the rain or terrible weather. And as usual, even when he was in the nursing home, apparently my father-in-law was making demands left and right to his wife. Eventually, she became so exhausted from doing everything for him, and she pushed herself to the limit. And this time my mother-in-law was the one that needed nursing care. Even though we thought that she would finally be able to be free now that her husband was in a nursing home, he was still using her like a slave. Because of that, she pushed herself too much, and now she was also unable to move freely, and I could only imagine how depressed she must have felt. That's why my husband and I went to his family home together, and we tried to suggest once again to his mother to come and move in with us. But when we did, we were shocked. My mother-in-law had already chosen a nursing home for herself without consulting any of us, and much to our shock, she chose to move into a different facility from her husband. We thought it was a waste of money, and we were totally happy to have my mother-in-law live with us, so we tried to convince her, but my mother-in-law refused to change her plan. When my father-in-law found out about this, of course, I'm sure that he was shocked. He was sure that it was a given that his wife was going to be entering the same facility as him, but instead, she moved into a completely different nursing home. And not only that, but there was quite a distance between the facility where her husband was admitted to. To us, as in Jonathan and his siblings and me, she said,
"Where I'm going is going to be quite far, so you really don't need to come and visit that often. I want you all to prioritize your lives and take care of yourselves and your families. When you were children, I know that I made you struggle, and even after I become this old, I don't want to cause you more trouble, and I'm fine. Do you want to know the reason why I tolerated that man's abuse for over 30 years? I know this may sound like an excuse to myself, but because of you kids, I was able to do my best and tolerate it. Because of you kids, I was able to become strong. But I recently realized that there is no need for me to have to be strong anymore. I am no longer by his side. That's going to be good medicine for that man. I've been tied down by him for many years now, but with this, I'm finally free."
And that's what she said to us. We were all shocked that she chose a different nursing home from her husband, and when we asked her about it, she said that she had already decided that from a long time ago. That when the day would come for her to go into nursing care, that she was going to go into a different home, and for that, she said that she had saved up a little bit of money every month from her husband's salary to be able to pay for her nursing home as well. But when you think about it, I think that was an obvious choice, and I'm happy for her. Even if she were to finally go into nursing care, if she was to be in the same facility as her husband, it was obvious that she was still going to have to be like a slave to her husband. My mother-in-law was also no longer physically free and needed intensive nursing herself. But at that rate, there would be no point in having put my father-in-law and the facility if he was just going to use my mother-in-law like a slave there. There's no way she would have been able to get any rest. But at that moment, we all felt like we finally saw the strength in my mother-in-law. That being said, she had spent so many years living together with such an abusive man, and if she wasn't a strong woman, then she would have collapsed many years ago already. After that, since his wife stopped coming to visit him, of course my father-in-law started calling his children and bothering them. However, of course, not one of them agreed to go visit him. After all those years of abuse, there is no way that they were going to continue listening to their father, especially when their mother was no longer around. It would be one thing if it was the family home, but he was in a nursing home now. Apparently, they received some phone calls from the staff of the nursing home every now and then, whenever necessary goods ran out. But during those times, and those times only, one of the siblings would take turns to go. They would hand over the goods to the staff and leave immediately. A little while after my mother-in-law had moved into the nursing home, my husband and I went to go visit her, and she seemed to be having such a great time, probably from being freed of her husband, that you wouldn't even think that she was ill because she looked so happy. In the nursing home, there were a lot of people who were around the same age as my mother-in-law, and because there were also some young people on staff, it seems like she's been inspired, and many good ways, and she was talking to everybody. And then, a couple of years after my mother-in-law and father-in-law had moved into nursing homes, I received a phone call out of nowhere one day from the nursing home staff that they weren't able to get a hold of my husband or any of his siblings. I gathered the necessary belongings and went, but when I got there, I was super shocked. My father-in-law, who was so abusive and always acting big, was sitting there, shriveled and wrinkled. I couldn't help but say to the staff, are you sure that's really my father-in-law? When I asked them, they laughed a little bit and told me that that was him. My husband didn't talk about his father much, so I didn't know, but it turns out that when my father-in-law first moved into the nursing home, he was yelling left and right to his wife and commanding her around. But around the time that she moved into a separate facility, he completely stopped talking and became like a zombie. Because he had a difficult personality, he wasn't getting along with the other residents in the nursing home, and he had become completely lonely. Apparently, the only people who speak to him are some of the kind staff members that feel bad for him. But even still, I was truly shocked at how much he had changed. I think that when he was on his abusive rampage, he must have been living off of everybody else's struggle. I felt a little awkward being there, and the staff were thoughtful that I was his daughter-in-law, so they simply took the goods from me, and I didn't have to actually speak to my father-in-law. But I was shocked at how much people can change so quickly. These days, my mother-in-law and father-in-law had completely changed sides since the day they were living at home together. It's true that the both of them moved into nursing homes, but my mother-in-law was probably going to enjoy the rest of her life so happily, while on the other hand, my father-in-law was probably going to die alone like this. I saw the two opposite ends of the spectrum. After all of the terrible things that my father-in-law had done to my husband, his siblings, and his mother, this was all happening and it was his own fault. So I don't feel sympathy for him.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.